Oh, yeah, here we go again. Hello, and welcome into Ray on Sports. I am your host, Johnny Ray. In this podcast, we talk all things sports from my own opinion. You may agree or you may disagree, but all I do is ask that you listen. So come on in, buckle up, and let's take this ride. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good, good.
All right. So this is Dr. Laby. He is a Dr. Laby. I'll give you some of his introduction. Dr. Laby has been trained in ophthalmology as well as sports vision. Dr. Laby attended the George Washington University School of Medicine, receiving his medical degree in 1987. He completed his residency in 1992 and a fellowship at UCLA in 1993. He was an associated clinical professional at the Laby University of New York College of Optometry, and a former assistant clinical professor of ophthalmology at the Harvard Medical School. Dr. Laby has served as a staff ophthalmologist for several professional sports teams, including MLB, NHL, and NBA, as well as working with medal-winning teams at the Beijing and Tokyo Olympic Games. Dr. Laby has over 30 years of experience in sports and performance vision. Dr. Laby is a board certified by the American Board of Ophthalmology and is a full member of the American Academy of Ophthalmology. He also has a fellow in American College of Sports Medicine and the Royal Academy of Medicine. He has authored many journal articles, textbook chapters, and is a co-author of the Dictionary of Ophthalmology, and recently published an Eye of the Champion, a guide to sports vision. He founded the international email list for community in sports vision and served as its moderator. Dr. Laby was featured in the recent full-length Red Bull documentary detailing his work with Trent Alexander-Arnold of Liverpool FC. He has also been featured on the NBC Today Show, Fox News, CBS News, and over a dozen national and local television and radio stations, as well as newspaper articles in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and Sports Illustrated. Dr. Laby has a YouTube channel with over 13,500 subscribers, releasing a weekly video about sports and performance visions. Lastly, Dr. Laby is humbled and has been part of the 8 Major League Baseball World Series championship, as well as several league championships. Wow.
So what's to leave that to me,
huh? that's an awesome, impressive. That's a mouthful. So, some of the things that I did not bring up, would you like to share anything else that I did not bring up?
That's pretty much what my life has been the last 30 years or so. Yeah. It's been a fun ride. Let's put it that way. Quite a trip.
Okay. So let's get into it. Is there any subjects that you want to cover, or can I just give you some questions that I have for you?
Well, you can shoot the questions at me. I could talk for hours, but let's hear what your audience wants to hear.
Okay. So, my first question is, how did you get started in sports vision?
Totally by accident is the answer. Like most things in life, that end up being a big part of your life, it's mostly by accident. I was doing I finished my ophthalmology training in Washington, D.C. and went to UCLA, as you mentioned, for my fellowship in pediatric ophthalmology, taking care of kids. And when I got there, the director said, you have to do a study. You have to be part of a research project and create a paper and publish it and so forth. And I said, okay. And I'm thinking about what I want to do. And he said, well, I have something I want you to finish up, because the last guy that was here before you started but didn't finish. And I said, I don't want to do that. I want to do my own project. I'm going to think of it myself, create what I'm interested in, and research it and so forth. And he said, we really want you to do this. And, being in charge, I kind of have to do what he says. But we can negotiate a little bit. And we negotiated that I would pick up the project, but I would be the main person behind it, like to shape it as I wanted to and so forth, and be the first author on the paper that we published in the end. And that's how I got involved in sports vision, because that was work that they had done with the LA Dodgers the spring before I arrived. They had some numbers, they had some data, but they hadn't really looked at it, hadn't figured out what it meant. And my job was now to take all these numbers and put them together into a story that had to do with vision and baseball performance. And it started with that, and the Dodgers had me back every year after that for about 18 seasons. And then when I got to Boston, the Red Sox had me start up with them in 2004 for their first the modern World Series victories, if you will. And then other clubs heard about it, and it got to the point that I was doing about a third of MLB baseball clubs, about 10 clubs a year. I'm still doing about 8, work with about 8 clubs, some more, some less. And then branched out into other sports, the Wayne Gretzky with the LA Kings, and 3 NBA teams, and the Beijing Olympics that he wrote, the Tokyo Games before the Paris Games here. All sorts of stuff. A Red Bull special with Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's a very good right back, right center midfielder for the Liverpool team, the Liverpool Football Club, an excellent Premier League soccer team, and kind of snowballed from there. And got to the point that we've written many articles about sports vision. I was getting consulted. I wrote this book, I Have a Champion, that came out, as you mentioned, this past spring. That's been very popular, and it kind of took over my life. And this is now what I do most of my week is sports vision.
Wow. Now, so for those who don't know too much about sports vision, how crucial is that to an athlete, the sports vision? Because I know, in some sports, I know like in football, you have to see, everything, but you have the helmet on, so it kind of like limits your vision a little bit. And then in baseball, you got to, kind of like, navigate through it. I'm not an athlete, but I kind of played a little bit. I played a little softball or something like that, and I can understand the nuances of it. So explain to my audience, how is that to you? What is that?
Well, the first point I think is, if you ever seen an athlete or anyone play a sport with their eyes closed, and the answer is no. You can't perform very well with your eyes closed. And so vision has a role. We have to agree on that basic point there. Mm-hmm. Now, what's interesting is people ask me often which sport has the best vision, right? Or what athlete has the best vision.
Right.
I can't answer that question because every sport has different requirements, right? In baseball, it's very important what's right in front of you, correct? In football, as you mentioned, your front vision is important, but your peripheral vision is important. There's in baseball, peripheral vision, and your batting is worthless. It doesn't do anything for you. Basketball, there's the ability to see behind your back, if you will. That's not really seeing behind your back, but it has to do with vision and prediction and keeping track of timing and so forth. And so there's an incredible number of different visual skills and abilities that come together differently in each sport. We wrote a paper about that, looking in the Olympics, in the Beijing Games, the U.S. Olympic Games. And for example, if you compare, I think, boxers that we worked with and the archers we worked with, archers. Mm-hmm. And who had better vision? Well, the archers had sharper vision; they could see further away, but they had no depth perception. And if you go to the boxers, the boxers didn't have as good sharpness. They were good, but it wasn't as good sharpness as the archers. But they had really good depth perception because they have to know, how far away the right hook is, how far away their opponent is.
Right.
In archery, the target is far away and is flat, so there's no depth. It doesn't matter how deep things are because it's a flat target. And so archers don't need depth perception. And so, I don't know, is depth perception more important or is sharper vision more important? Well, it depends on the sport. So the idea of sports vision is to identify the different visual skills required to perform well and make sure the athlete has those abilities. And if not, either correct it or train it so they get the abilities they need to show their natural talent and to perform at the optimum.
Okay. Now, when we're talking football, in football, we talk about the vision and how about the peripheral. What do you say? Is there a position that's more important for the vision or less important? Like say a quarterback's vision is better than maybe a running back's vision or a wide receiver vision. Is there a difference in that?
I think we have to get to when we talk about vision, what are we talking about? It's not sharpness. It's not the eye chart that you're reading letters on the eye chart. That's one aspect of it, but it's far wider than that. It's not only identifying a small target, but it's being able to see a target that's faint, lower contrast. Because not all of the athletes on the football field are black on white. The uniforms aren't black on a white field. That's high contrast. That's 100% contrast. They're all different shades. There's the background of the stadium, which is all different colors. The ability to detect contrast is important. The ability to see something quickly is important. You can just have someone look at an eye chart and read correctly the line, but it takes them 5 minutes to get it correct. Or you get someone who looks at it and the snap tells you what they are. You would say the person who reads it quickly has better vision, but the score is the same. They both got the same number of letters correct. And so you not only have to be able to see small targets that are faint, you have to be able to see them quickly and appreciate them quickly. And that's just the kind of vision part of it. Then we talk about the depth perception we talked about. We talk about how you use your eyes to make a decision, your vision, what you see to make a decision to act. because if you're a running back and you have the ball, you have to decide if you're going to cut right or you're going to cut left. You're going to go straight, depending on where the other players are, how they're moving. You have to predict their movement based on what you're seeing, their speed, their direction, their angles, and all that you have to take into account when you're deciding where you're going to go. And that's vision as well, right? If you're a receiver, you have to be able to not only know, where the defense is, where you are on the field, but you have to obviously be knowing what's going on with the quarterback, track the ball, anticipate where the ball is going to go, jump at the right time to catch the ball. All those things require vision. And so it's much, much more than just how good you see a chart. It has to do with putting the whole package together into what you see, how you process it, and then how you act on it. That's what sports vision is about, and that's what is different in each position and in each sport.
Okay. Now, when we talk about that, you said how about process it. Does it have more to do with your mind as well as how fast you process it, even though you see it? Like, some people can see things and read it, but they can't process it fast enough. Does that have a lot to do with it?
Yes, absolutely. I think 75 to 90% of the brain is somehow related to vision, processing visual information, and how fast those areas work. Is going to be key to whether you can then make a decision and then initiate a motor action that's guided by the vision. It's not just deciding you want to move and then moving. You have to know where to move to, and that's guided by your vision. Right. And so, it's how fast you can work on that kind of information. It's not going to be how smart you are, or how bright, how fast you do a math problem. That's not related. It's going to be really basic, subconscious, unconscious processing of visual information. And there's no doubt there are people that are faster at that than other people. And there are people who are able to concentrate better than other people and acquire that information and keep track of that information better than other people. Fortunately, we can evaluate most of that, and we can train people that are having difficulty.
Okay. We're right here on Ray on Sports. I'm here with Dr. Laby, world-renowned ophthalmologist, here on Ray on Sports. Another question for you, Doctor. What is the best vision an athlete can have?
Well, that's another good question. The best vision humans can have is not 20/20. That's very important, I think, for our audience to understand. 20/20 is average vision. And to understand the fraction 20/20 in feet, in Europe it's in meters, so 6/6, but in feet, 20/20. If you have poor vision, you have 20/40, for example, 20/40.
Okay.
Well, that means that you can see from 20 feet what a normal person sees from 40 feet. It just means comparing you to normal. So if you're 20/20, you see from 20 feet, what a normal person sees from 20 feet. That's nice, but normal means average, right? Normal is not the best.
Right.
It's just the average.
Right.
And so 20/20, although good, is not the best vision. The best human vision is measured at 20/8, which means that you can see from 20 feet what the average person sees from 8 feet. They have to be 12 feet closer to see the same thing. And that's the best vision possible.
Okay. Now, because for me, I have vision problems right now because I forgot my computer glasses. That's why I don't have my glasses on. I have two sets. I have a driving set and I have a computer set. And the doctor told me that my vision was deteriorating a little bit. And I used to joke with him. He said, "Well, how are you seeing at night if your vision is that bad?" I said, "I just recognize the signs and recognize where I need to turn and when I need not to turn. Landmarks." So that's how I was getting around. But over time, I know it deteriorates. So in athletes, how do you tell the athlete that his vision is deteriorating, or how can you make that call, or is that something that you just leave it up to them, or do you make a hard call to them?
No, we definitely do not want to trust an athlete to decide that not seeing well. When the athlete feels he's not seeing well, he's in deep trouble. That means he hasn't been seeing well. He or she hasn't been seeing well for a long time. That likely has affected their performance in the recent past. And that's not the way we want to do it. So most clubs, in fact, have me come in at least once a year, if not more frequently, to evaluate the vision of their players. Usually we try to do it at the beginning of the season to make sure that everyone is optimized when we start the campaign. If we wait for players to say, "I can't see well," then it's just going to be too late. The vision, I told you 20/8 was the best vision possible. I told you 20/20 was normal vision. In general, athletes want to have 20/15 vision or better. So that's one line smaller than the 20/20 line. Some sports require smaller than that, but for example, in baseball, the average is 20/12. That's the average vision of a professional baseball player. Meaning they can see from 20 feet what the average person on the street sees from 12 feet. They can be 8 feet further and still see it. That's just the sharpness of vision part. But I mentioned other parts of vision as well, which is critical to evaluate. And so when we have an athlete, we check them once a year, evaluate their vision. If it's not proper, we talk to them about how we can correct it. Glasses or contact lenses are usually the answers for that. And we talk to them about what we've seen in terms of published articles and research showing that if their vision is not proper, they're not going to perform as well as if their vision was improved. And, athletes are competitive. They want to do the best they can. You want to get the best shoes you can. You want to get the best, everything you can. And glasses or contacts are simply another device to allow you to have the best you can find.
Okay. Now, you say talking about glasses and contacts. Like I see some athletes with like goggles and things like that they wear. Are those really prescribed goggles, or is it something just to protect their eyes?
Most of the time, they're going to be prescription. Sometimes it's protection, depending on what their history is. But the majority of the ones you see are going to have prescriptions there. In basketball, there may be more protection involved, but in general, they're going to have sports glasses that are going to have a prescription there. And they're not going to be high prescriptions. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Athletes are going to have very, very small prescriptions, just enough to get them that edge to see better. They're not going to come in, for the most part, there are exceptions, but for the most part, with high prescription numbers, thick glasses, that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about prescriptions that the average person may not even need. We wouldn't even prescribe to the average person. But the average person is not the average athlete. The athlete is different, and we need to recognize that and optimize their vision for the performance.
Wow. Now, I'm gonna ask you something, and I don't know if you can get into details of the athletes themselves, but have there been any prominent or famous athletes that we might know? Not trying to put no names out there because I don't want nobody to say anything. But have you had anyone that you've had to tell them to shut it down?
To shut it down?
Yeah.
Not to play?
Like as far as not to play. Like your vision, if you play another snap, if you bounce another ball, if you kick another ball, it's not going to be good for you.
Yeah. So there's two reasons why. Well, there's two things. Number one, we have certainly had athletes that haven't had the vision that I know when I talk to them and see them that's going to let them advance and perform optimally. My place isn't to tell somebody they're not going to play. There's reports that even people like Babe Ruth had bad vision in one eye. And he was pretty good. So, but when a team decides whether an athlete's going to remain on the team or not, it's not solely based on their vision. Their performance is what's going to drive that decision, right? Now, the vision might underlie their reduced performance, and if I can't correct them for whatever reason, that could be the reason. But I'll never tell an athlete your vision's not good enough to perform, because I know that vision is not the only thing that's going to allow good performance, right? There are people who have incredible skill, and I just saw at the MLB Combine in June, players that had poor vision but were rated high in the draft because they performed well. Now, the hope is that when we correct their vision, they perform even better, and the club that signs them, gets added value for what they're choosing. But they still performed well, and they were highly regarded. So, vision is not going to be the reason I'm going to tell someone not to perform. Now, on the flip side, I've had players that have overworn their contact lenses and have damaged their eyes that can't be repaired, and I've advised the club that that's a situation that is going to likely impact their future performance. And if they have two guys that are about the same, and this guy has a problem with his vision that we can't correct, and this guy is fine, you're probably better off taking the guy who's fine as a better bet against the other guy. So we have discussions like that on occasion. But my job is to help athletes perform their best and to succeed, not so much to decide who can't play and make that kind of stuff.
Okay. So my another question, what is the quiet eye and how does it help perform?
Quiet eye is a really neat thing. And quiet eye is something that is going to help not only the athletes that we work with, but actually every member of your audience. And the quiet eye is a phenomenon that a professor in Canada who's now retired, her name is Joan Vickers, described initially several years ago. And it has to do with what you're looking at just before, during, and just after the critical movement in the sport. I'll give you an example in golf, for example. Because golf is something I think that probably a lot of your audience might be interested in. So if you're putting and you have the ball in front of you and you have the putter and you have a hole to, let's say, your left and the putter swing to the right, and the putter comes forward, it hits the ball, and the ball takes off towards the hole, and you kind of figured out the slant of the green, and you figured out where to aim the ball and how to hit it and so forth. That's all really nice. But if you want to be successful in putting that ball in the hole, there's one more piece you have to do, and that's a quiet eye. And what that talks about is what you're looking at when the putter hits the ball. Almost certainly you're going to be looking at the ball before the putter comes. But the moment the putter hits the ball, what are you doing with your eyes? Are you still looking at that same point of contact, or are you going to track the ball and see if it goes in the hole? If you do that, looking at the ball going in the hole, you're not going to perform well. If you keep your eyes fixed right on the point of contact of the putter to the ball for about a second, let's say half a second, then your likelihood of sinking the putt goes up dramatically. And that's what the quiet eye is about. It's keeping your eye quiet in terms of movement before, during, and after the critical moment, in this case, contact of the putter with the ball in golf. And the reason for that is that when you make an eye movement, it doesn't happen instantaneously. If you think about it, to make your eyes move takes your brain deciding to make your eyes move, sending a signal down the nerves to the eye muscles to make them contract, get those muscles to contract appropriately to actually move the eyeball to look in a different direction. That sounds like a fast thing, but it's about a third of a second it takes to do that.
Really?
About how long it takes to blink the eye. Blinking the eye is about a third of a second. In terms of vision neuroprocessing, that's a long time. And what that means is that before the putter, if you're going to look at the ball the moment it hits to see where it goes, 300 milliseconds before the putter hit the ball, you are thinking about moving your eye to some extent, not 100% thinking about your shot, how the putter is going to contact the ball and make the shot. And that means you're distracted, basically. Just like if you're cutting something really finely and someone calls your name, next thing you know, you cut your finger. Because your concentration was there when you were cutting, you got distracted, and you missed, right? Same thing, you got distracted when you want to move your eye right away on contact, because you were thinking about moving your eye, you had to be thinking about moving your eye a third of a second prior to that. And that interferes with your final movement of that putter to hit the ball. And there's been multiple studies published about why that, how that happens, the fact that it happens, and what the result is on performance. Whether it's a golf handicap or all sorts of different metrics in golf. It's true in basketball. We published a paper in basketball, for example, where we had an NBA team make 30 free throws. But every guy on the team do 30 free throws, and we measured how many free throws they were successful in making. Right, and it ranged from 16 to 30. And if you look at the guys who got 30, you find that what they were looking at that moment, before, during, and after, they made the shot with a specific point on the basketball rim. If you look at the guys who got 16, they were looking all over the backboard, a little bit on the rim, all different places. They weren't fixed on one area because their eye wasn't quiet, it was moving. And they got 16 out of 30, which is not bad. I probably had trouble doing that. But the guys who got 30 out of 30 are the guys who went on my team if I'm an NBA coach, because that's the guys who are getting it. And so that's a quiet eye in basketball. We've seen it in baseball. We described it, what the batter looks at when they're facing the pitcher, what they should be doing with their eyes, and where they should move them, where they should keep them quiet. We teach that, we train that to get better success with that. And so pretty much every sport has a quiet eye component, and it's been described, and it's a very important aspect of performance.
Wow. Okay. So I bowl like not recreational. I bowled in the league. So I think I use it because they tell you to look at the lines on the ground. They'll tell you don't look at the pins, look at the lines on the ground and focus on that. So when I focus on that, the ball goes where it needs to go. But if I don't, if I'm looking down there, it's taken off to the left, taken off, whatever it is. I'm not the best, but I've learned things like that. So yeah,
as you approach the line with the ball, and as you release the ball, and even a third of half a second after you release the ball, keep your eyes in that same spot, and you'll have
okay. Wow. See, you just improved my game 100 points.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that. We're over here on Realm Sports with Dr. Laby, world-renowned ophthalmologist, was kind enough to come on my show today. Thank you guys for listening. Dr. Laby, what sport has the best vision?
We talked about that, right? No sport has the best vision. Every sport has different vision, and depending on what you need for that sport, that's what we have to measure and see.
Okay. Now, how does technology help you and your athletes?
I told you, everybody asks me that question. I get that question so many times. What sport has the best?
Yeah.
Technology. That's a whole nother really fun area.
Hmm.
30 years ago, 1992 is when I started in sports. So 32 years ago. And technology, think about it, cell phone 32 years ago. It was
Hmm.
probably a big box, right? There
Right.
was no iPhone 32 years ago. And it was just very different. So technology has come a long way since we started. When we started testing vision, there was no vision system, no computer vision testing system that existed that we could use to test the vision that we needed in the athletes, in the Dodgers, for example. We used to take we used to take the system, and instead of putting it at 10 feet, when we had it calibrated for 10 feet, we put it at 20 feet. But the machine thought we were 10 feet, so we made it twice as hard, right? We took it, what would have been a 10, reasonable, we moved it to 20, which made it farther away.
Oh, wow.
Because there was no system that could do the test we wanted. We used to change the little computer chips inside the computer, little EEPROM chips, to get the right program that we
Mhm.
needed. Because no one had that. No one made it. It didn't exist. And I don't know if you've ever seen a computer EEPROM chip, with all the little legs on it, like a little spider, like
Yes,
caterpillar.
yes.
You got to
Uh-huh.
stick it into a
Yep.
socket, into a board, and if you don't
Mhm.
do it just right, you bend the leg, and you bend the
Right,
leg, it doesn't
right.
work anymore,
Mhm.
it falls off. Well, we lost a lot of a lot of chips putting them in wrong, and there were times when we didn't have any more chips, we couldn't do the work because we had ruined all the chips. That was 32 years ago. Nowadays, we're working on things like virtual reality headsets, like whether it's the Apple
Mhm.
headset or the Meta Quest headset, things that were dreams of people 32 years ago. And there are systems in those headsets that incredibly can train and test lots of these visual functions. We can do things that without putting athletes through the physical stress of actions, we can simulate them in the virtual reality space and have them have the mental and visual training without the physical fatigue that comes with it. Because athletes, there's a limit to how much you can train a day. You can't, take batting
Right,
practice 8 hours a day. No way you can do that. You can't,
right.
run on the court or on the field and play tennis, the whole day without killing yourself. But what I'm interested in is the physical part's important, but I'm interested in the mental and visual part, making sure the brain is able to work with the vision properly. And that we can do in these VR headsets pretty well. And so their technology has really changed significantly in 32 years. And it's going to be kind of interesting to see what happens in the next 5 to 10 years. Whether it's
Oh,
AI
wow.
driven, trainers, that are able to really bring in incredible amounts of knowledge and research to create a training program for an athlete, perhaps better than
Mhm.
I can do because I don't have the ability to remember all this research that the computer
Mhm.
does. So I think that not only has it changed a lot, but I think it's really an interesting future coming.
Wow. Now, speaking of that virtual reality, 'cause you have a lot of the younger kids now, they're using the VRs a lot and tablets and stuff like that. My grandson was one of them who has a tablet, and he just did an eye test, and they said, cut the time down on the tablet. So let's talk about that. About how much time should, because I got a lot of viewers who have kids who want to know this stuff. How much time should a child spend on a tablet or a VR per day?
This is where my pediatric ophthalmology work comes in well because 2 days a week I see patients. I see not necessarily sports patients, but young kids in the office, and that's a very very common question. In sports, most common question is who has the best vision. And in my office, what can we do to, how long should they be on a tablet and a computer? What should we do to prevent them from getting glasses? Well, it's a mixed bag. I think what's important for a child is to have a well-rounded experience. And if the child is
Mhm.
spending an excessive amount of time on a tablet, they're not having a well-rounded experience. So well-rounded, what I mean, is entertainment, creativity, physical exercise, mental challenges, discussion with other people. All the different skills that you would want a young child to develop to be successful when they're growing up. You want to have those skills practiced when they're young. And I have a two-year-old grandson, two-plus-year-old grandson, and we try to do that because to me,
Mhm.
you can't start too young to get those skills embedded into their being. And
Right.
so, I tell people an hour or two on a tablet is plenty of time in terms of entertainment. A lot of places
Mhm.
use tablets for school, for homework, and that's a little different because people have to do their homework. But if we're talking entertainment, I like to see a kid spend an hour on a tablet, spend an hour outdoors in the sun, getting exercise, spend some time being creative, whether it's drawing, building, things like that, interacting with other people. It's kind of sad for people on their phones or on their tablets texting and Instagramming and social media the whole time, but not actually speaking to anybody. Because interaction with people is not just reading the words; it's a matter of hearing the words, how they're said, looking at facial expressions, body language. That's how you understand what people are saying and what they mean, whether you can trust what they say, whether you can't. All those aspects are learned. You're not born knowing those things, and it's important to have that interaction. Certainly with your friends, I have nothing wrong with being with your friends. Even a video conference, a Zoom call with your friends is better than texting someone in social media, because you at least can see somebody, interact with them, and so forth. But being well-rounded exposure, I think, is key here. And some people may have homework that takes up, most of the time. They don't have time for all that every day. Other people have less, and they have more time for those different activities.
Okay. We're talking here with Dr. Laby, world-renowned ophthalmologist. Is there any other projects that you're working on right now, Doctor?
A lot of different projects. Most of them are pretty confidential, just because there were different clubs and it's actually interesting because when you work with different clubs of the same sport, you kind of have to keep separate each of those different clubs, because what one club may invest in terms of projects and players and research, that's their information. That's not, you can't share that with everybody, because the other people input the investment. So there are different things we do with different clubs. They're different, which is interesting. But there's a lot of there's a lot of reading. You can't see on my desk, but it's piled high with books, because there's incredible amounts of material out there and information out there. And I think the task is to be aware of as much as you can in many different fields and see what you can put together that's going to help the athlete perform better in terms of the visual system. And so whether it's brain stimulation, there's a lot of work being done with a little bit of current or magnets that sit on the surface of your head that stimulate the brain. Whether it's something like that can help improve performance, processing, and so forth. I found that interesting, and I've been kind of following that for a while. The effect of different colored lights in how you perceive things in terms of speed. There's an interesting phenomenon that's really quite amazing. If you take like a string and a ball, and you just swing that ball back and forth, right? Just back and forth. You'll see it just swing back and forth. If you take a special lens and put it in front of one of your eyes, it's called a neutral density filter. It's a lens that basically makes things a little bit dimmer. So one eye is kind of seeing bright, and the other eye is seeing a little bit dim. Now that ball that's just going back and forth, now is going in a circle. Has depth. That's called the Fulfrich effect. It's been around for many, many years. But the question is, can we leverage that effect in changing the perception of time? Because what happens with the lower light coming into one eye, what that eye sees is delayed compared to the other eye. And the brain tries to put those two pictures, one on time, one delayed together, and that creates a depth. And so can we use that kind of approach to help athletes' brains process things faster, so when they actually get on the field to play, it feels like the game is really slow and it's really easy to figure out what to do. There's interesting things going on.
Yeah, and I think we already covered this question, but I'll ask it anyway. How do you see the field developing over the next several years?
I think I've seen already an incredible increase in the awareness of the importance of vision in sports performance, and that's really nice and really important. It's not everywhere. Certain sports have no idea. Certain clubs have no idea. In fact, if you look at the clubs that don't tend to make the playoffs, they're the ones who don't tend to understand the importance of vision and don't have anyone working with them in vision. The teams who win the World Series, in the 30 years I've been working in MLB, 8 World Series championship is a pretty big number. I'm not sure there's anyone that has more than that that's alive. There are people that have more that are passed away but alive. But that's not because I make teams win World Series. It's because teams have the understanding that vision is a critical component, along with a bunch of other components. If you put all that together, you're going to have a winning team. And
Mhm.
you have a winning team, eventually you're going to win the World Series. Like the Red Sox 4 times, the Astros twice,
Right.
the Rangers last year. All those clubs, have a whole series of elements they put together. Other clubs don't do that; they don't win. And so,
Mm.
the awareness of vision is one of those components that's really grown in the last 30 years with the clubs, which is to me very gratifying and very positive. Even into amateur sports has grown a lot too. I had just this afternoon a player from San Francisco that's doing a special vision test we have online to check what their vision is before they're serious in terms of college ball and eventually professional ball. I have someone, a 13-year-old that's in the Far East that plays a sport and is trying to get to the Olympics in LA in 4 years, in 2028. And so we're training her to hopefully get there for
Mhm.
her country. So worldwide awareness and vision has improved, has increased, and I think we're going to see in the future an increase in that, increase in number of people that are seeking help in vision, evaluation of vision. And again, that's the reason why I wrote this book, uh,
Yeah.
really to let people have some basic understanding of what's important in terms of vision in sports performance.
Right.
By the
And
way,
and where's your
Amazon.
where can anybody pick up your book at? Is it on Amazon?
Amazon. Amazon has it. I Am the
Okay.
Champion
Okay.
on Amazon, or just my name on Amazon, and you'll find it.
Okay. 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 So and I'm just thinking about in swimming. If I was listening, I was watching the Olympics. I'm sorry, and they do the backstroke, and they said for them to look and see where they're going, they look up at the ceiling, and it has a line on it and keeps them on track.
Yeah.
So talk about that. How does that work?
Well, that's a great example of eye-hand coordination, right? The eye-hand, eye-foot
Mhm.
coordination. It's a great example of anticipation. When that swimmer has to turn, they can't stop and go around and turn. They have to kind of know and feel where the wall is to make that turn efficient and obviously proper and fast. And so by watching the ceiling, they know where they are in the pool, right? You can look at the ceiling, you can look at the
Mhm.
bottom of the pool. As long as you know where you are and you know what's coming, you can make that decision to act just at that moment based on what you're seeing, put your hands and your feet in the right place to efficiently turn, not just stay in your lane, but to make it turn. The turn is critical because swimmers can certainly lose in the turn. The strokes are critical as well, but the turn can really mess you up. If you're off on the turn, you're not pushing off as hard as you should. You may get too close, and then you're gonna not be convenient in your stroke and your leg. If it's smooth, you get a great turnaround, efficient speed, distance, and so forth. And that all comes from knowing where you are, by seeing where you are, by connecting your vision with your motor system, your hands.
Wow. Wow. So, and I know I'm jumping to different sports, but it's all coming to me now. I'm thinking about these things. In boxing, when a boxer gets hit, and I've heard in the past, the Floyd Mayweathers, the Muhammad Ali's, those guys, they get too many hits to the head and it affects their vision. Can you explain how does that happen, and how
Yeah,
much can they take?
yeah. We get we've had a lot of talk about concussions and about brain injuries and damage. And look at football players, certainly boxers. There's a certain amount of trauma the brain can take before there is damage, right? And the damage can be subtle, or the damage can be much more obvious. Certainly, we don't want anybody to get obvious damage in their brain from sports. The key is to understand when's the time to stop, because you've had too much accumulation of damage before you get even worse. And we know that if you have a concussion, in the immediate period after concussion, if you get struck again, you have even greater damage than if you're struck twice separately. And every time you have a concussion, there's a little bit of damage. Now, fortunately, our brains have a lot of reserve, so a little bit of damage might not make a difference, right? But if you're a boxer, you've been hit many times where your head, your head goes one direction, your brain goes a different direction, it sloshes up against the inside of the skull, sloshes back against the other side of the skull, and those tissues get hit, are not very happy. Unfortunately, the back part of your skull is where the vision center is. And if your brain is hitting the back part of your skull, bouncing around and you get hit, that's going to affect the back part of the vision area. So not only in terms of actually what you see, but how you process that visual information will be affected. And if it happens too much, lots of those areas, I told you, 75 to 90% of the brain is related to vision. If 30% of your brain is not working, you've lost a good part of your ability to use
Hmm.
your vision, and that
Right.
then obviously is going to be detrimental. You get Parkinson's, like Muhammad Ali got. Uh, you get trouble thinking, trouble making decisions. You get depression. You've seen a lot of football guys who
Hmm.
have those issues. Um, Unfortunately, football and boxing are probably the two most uh, the highest chance for damage in the head. You can
Hmm.
certainly have damage from hitting the soccer ball too much. Um, in baseball, you don't really have too much of that. There are collisions, you can get a concussion, but you don't really have repeated concussions too much. But boxing and football, unfortunately, are two sports where there's significant force interacting with your body and your head, and that's a problem.
Wow. So are there any steps being taken as far? I know in football, because I watch a lot of football and I listen to them talk about how they're changing different rules of how they tackle, no more targeting, things of that nature, especially on the not just the pro level, the college level, and the high school level, because for young people, I think they look at these older athletes and see them target and they see them hit and they see this and they want to be that. But is it damage? Can the damage start that young, as early as high school, and then if it's not treated at that time, could it affect you going forward?
Absolutely. It's almost what you want to have. You may have seen in the hospital the X-ray technician has a little badge, and that badge
Hmm.
is measuring the radiation. If they have too much radiation, then they could get cancer, for example, right? So it would be
Okay.
nice if we had a concussion badge, where you have to wear this concussion badge starting in high school when you start playing, or maybe even junior high, or even before that, and that's going to measure how much trauma you've had. And when you get to a
Mm.
certain point, that badge starts turning red. Orange will say instead of red, right? Then you've had your share of trauma, and if you go on, it's pretty clear that you're going to have damage to your brain. That's not fixable. That's not going to come back. And there may be people that do really well and don't have, only have like maybe a little yellow green badge when they get to the pro level, so they have a lot of room, if you will, to get hit. And you may get guys
Mhm.
who are kind of red already when they get to the pro level, and those are guys that you don't want to. Sorry, turn it off. Those are guys that you know, you don't want to get hit, because they're going to have serious
Right.
damage that's not going to be fixable. And so, unfortunately, we don't have a thing like that. But you have to think about accumulated trauma over your lifetime, not just when you get to college or when you get to the pro level.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. So for future parents and future athletes, is there any advice you would give them, going into sports as far as their vision is concerned?
Well, number one would be definitely to evaluate the vision. It's not going. It's really never really too early to check vision. Unfortunately, I have every week or two someone that comes into my office that's 12, 13, 14 years old, and says, "Doc, I can't see good in one eye. Can you fix it?" And the
Mm.
problem is that it should have been fixed when they were 4, not when they're 13. And it's too late, because the brain has already finished developing the ability to learn how to see. People aren't born with 20/20 vision. People develop that over the first 7 years or so of life. Babies have terrible vision. All they got to do is two things, right? They got to poop and they got to eat. That's all a baby
Right.
does. And so you don't need very much vision for that. But as you learn how to walk, you better start seeing a little bit better, because you have to navigate where you're walking. And as you get even older, you have to see even better. And 20/20 comes in at about 7 years old. But if there's something that interferes with that development, whether it's a different prescription in two eyes, or a crossed eye, cataract, anything, if that's not taken care of early, allowing time for the vision to be learned up until 7, 8, 9 years old, when you get to 14, 15, 16 and onwards, it's too late. Your brain is set, and there's nothing can be done. And that can impact potential sports performance. And so, if whether your child's an athlete or not, the vision should be evaluated, and it should be evaluated well, because school checks it, the pediatrician should be checking it. But sometimes kids cheat, they peek, they look, and then you miss it. So
Right.
that's an important thing, to make sure it's evaluated well. So that's number one. Number two, when the kid does get old enough to actually start performing well and take their sport seriously, then you need a sports vision exam. You need to look at those elements for their sport in vision and visual processing and visual motor movements that are critical to that sport, to make sure that they have what they need at the level that's necessary to perform well at that sport. And again, every sport's different, so it depends on the sport. And that's what you want to then train and correct, so that now the child that spends hours training and practicing has the best chance to leverage that training and practicing for maximum effect. If the vision is not as good, they can train their head off to actually perform well.
Wow, that's valuable information. You guys hearing this? This is valuable information I'm giving you. This is Ray on Sports. I don't just talk sports. I get professionals on here who know what they're talking about.
Well, I'll tell you right.
Thank you.
I do one-on-one training with people. Discussion about what to do one-on-one, and we're sort of doing one-on-one here. It's $350 an hour. So your audience is getting a good buy right now.
You hear the audience getting a good buy. But make sure to check out his new book. His book is called Eye of the Champion. It's on Amazon. It's called Eye of the Champion. His name is Dr. Laby. That's Daniel Laby, Laby, professional ophthalmologist for over 30-some years in ophthalmology. So check him out. Thank you, Dr. Laby, for being on the show. I appreciate it. This is valuable information. This is some stuff that I didn't even think about, but it's good that you brought it to light. And we do want to our kids, we want our kids to succeed in sports. We want our kids to do well in things, but we want them to be healthy as well. So we don't just want them to just get out there and just because what I see is like a lot of parents, and I don't know who I'm talking to. You might get upset with me. I don't care. It's my show. But take care of your children. Don't just look for the dollar sign. Don't just say I'm gonna put them in there. If your child says there's something going on, check it out. Get it checked out. Dr. Laby just told you that your vision is 90% of your brain, and it takes a lot. So if your child comes to you and says, I can't see too well, or I'm having problems with this, I'm having problems with that, get it checked out. Please, people, please. Thank you, Dr. Laby. Do you have any final comments before we go off?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. If we get people to listen, working with professional athletes is fun, it's nice and so forth, but the truth is, I enjoy better seeing a young kid that we can take care of, get them fixed up, let them, have success in their sport they like. Maybe they don't make it professionally. It doesn't matter. If they enjoy what they're doing, that's important. They learn how to get the skills they need to perform well when they're older. That's critically important. And if we can help them do that, then I think, I've done my job. I feel like I've spent 30-something years doing something that's valuable, and I can sleep good at night. Let's put it that way. And that's really important. As a parent, a grandparent, I already sent my other granddaughter to have an eye exam because we were suspicious about something. I'm not going to take care of my own kids, so I'd send them to college. But have suspicion. The worst thing that happened is you wasted your time and you found out the kid was fine. The best thing can happen is you went there and you found out there's something you can fix and save the kid's vision, potentially save their life. I found several times, unfortunately, cancers in kids that if we hadn't seen it early enough would have been devastating. And so hopefully that's not going to be the case. But again, if you find it early, great. You're ahead of the game. And so really, there's no better asset than you have than your kids. The money in your bank is paper. It's worthless. Your kids are the future. Your kids are you, the next generation. And it's really important to be a part of that from the beginning to the end as well.
All right. Dr. Laby, once again, like I said, I appreciate you. That's all the time we have for Ray on Sports for this episode. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you guys coming in and listening to the show. Remember, you can catch a replay of this on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, on Facebook, wherever you get your podcast from. This is Johnny Ray from Ray on Sports. Once again, like I say, thank you for taking this ride. Take care, and God bless.